Hello, dear friends. What to do? Start where you are. Use what you have and do what you can. This summary is the result of hours of work after an information-heavy Monday. Opinion piece. Ancient Jewish prophecy. Jews await their Messiah. Ukraine tension would herald his coming. Would precede the biblical battle of Gog and Magog. Canada to supply lethal weaponry to Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities protest against the US. US believes that Russia has not made the decision to attack. Israel's freedom convoy arrives in Jerusalem. Chilean truckers lift blockade in the north. Argentina carried out military maneuvers to invade Venezuela. Justin Trudeau issues emergency law against truckers. Elon Musk says US debt triples its economy. Object on collision course with Moon is not a SpaceX Falcon-9. Let's start. An ancient Jewish prophecy says that the war between Russia and Ukraine would herald the coming of their Messiah. Rabbi Eliyahu ben Shlomo Zalman was a leading interpreter of the religious text and one of the most influential Jewish figures since the Middle Ages. It is said that he transmitted to his son a prophecy that reads as follows. When you hear that the Russians have captured the city of Crimea, you should know that the times of the Messiah have begun, that his footsteps are being heard, prophesied Gaon of Vilna. Quotes again. And when you hear that the Russians have reached the city of Constantinople, you should put on your Sabbath clothes and not take them off, because it means that the Messiah is about to arrive at any moment. While Christians believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, Jews believe that the promised Savior, who would transform the nation of the earth, is yet to come. It is clear that Russian forces have not yet entered the Constantinople, now called Istanbul, although they have come into conflict with Turkish forces in Syria, and Putin's troops annexed the Crimean Peninsula in 2014 after civil war broke out in the Russian-speaking Donbas region of eastern Ukraine. Gaon of Vilna's prophecy was publicly revealed by his great-grandson, Rabbi Pinchas Wiston, a writer who specializes in end-of-the-days theories. Wiston says the alarming situation in Eastern Europe seems to parallel the battle of Gog and Magog, the opponents of God mentioned in some apocalyptic biblical texts. He also claims that his great-grandfather predicted that the war between Turkey and Russia would occur before Gog and Magog. Ukraine. First, tense calm in the Sea of Azov. While the world looks askance at the military maneuvers of Russian troops in Belarus, Ukraine is worried about the possibility that similar maneuvers could take place in the Sea of Azov. Russia announced last week the partial blockade of maritime traffic in the Sea of Azov in the Black Sea for maneuvers. Kiev condemned the announcement, although in the end there was no blockade, since the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea are essential for Ukraine's exports. Second, danger in the Black Sea. The Ukrainian government has advised commercial airlines not to fly over the Black Sea during the next few days because they consider this region potentially dangerous. This warning will remain in effect until February 19. Third, Opportunities for peace in Ukraine. The diplomatic frenzy does not seem to have borne much fruit so far. In any case, Russia is losing its initial advantage in the confrontation because it doesn't have the surprise factor, and the allies are united to respond to a hypothetical invasion of Ukrainian territory. Fourth, Russia keeps the diplomatic way open in the Ukrainian crisis. The Ukrainian crisis can be solved through diplomatic channels. This is what Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told Russian President Vladimir Putin during their meeting in Moscow on Monday. 5. They do not want to negotiate. The deputy head of the Russian presidential cabinet, Dmitry Kozhov, said that Russia's partners in the Normandy Quartet, Germany, Russia, Ukraine and France, tend to postpone negotiations on the settlement of the Ukrainian conflict in strict accordance with the instructions they have received from the US. 6. NATO says it is open to negotiation. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has assured that they are also prepared to continue the path of dialogue, but he insists that Russia must demonstrate its willingness to reach agreements by withdrawing its troops from the Ukrainian border. 7th, Ukraine rebels against the US. Ukrainian authorities are denouncing and directly accusing the US of creating a hybrid disinformation war, creating a state of panic. This became evident with the coordinated evacuation of its diplomatic staff by several Western countries. This was President Zelensky's statement, debunking rumors of an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine. 8. US believes that Russia has not yet made final decision on attacking Ukraine. The Pentagon stressed Monday that Russia has not yet made a final decision on whether or not to attack Ukraine, despite reports that aggression could occur this week. 9. The US traditionally resolves its domestic political crisis by waging war, according to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Chris Hedges. In his view, his country is a de facto one-party state where the ideology of national security is sacrosanct, and sustainable debt props up the empire, and the main business is war. 10th, Biden puts pressure on Ukraine. All utilities have been put on high alert in the wake of the tension with Russia. Rail, air and other travel services could shut down immediately. Hospitals around the world are under cyber attack. 11. Cyber attacks. Officials from the White House intelligence agencies and the Department of Homeland Security met Friday to discuss the response to a possible hacking wave given the current tensions between NATO and Russia. Canada. Canada announces it will supply Ukraine with lethal weaponry. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced the approval of a plan to supply Ukraine with lethal weaponry and ammunition worth more than US $6 million. Second, Canada invokes emergency powers. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday invoked the Emergencies Act for the first time in Canada's history to deal with truckers' protests against restrictions in Ottawa and at several US border crossings. These powers were last used by his father to fight Quebec separatists in 1970. Third, media support. The media is backing the Canadian government over the crackdown on its truckers. If Tiananmen Square happened again, the mainstream media would side with the CCP, says economist Steve Moore. Fourth, Canadian truckers lose blocked bridge. Canadian police officials said Sunday they were preparing to reopen a major international bridge that had been blocked by protesters for nearly a week. 5. After Canadian truckers were forced to leave the border, protesters returned on foot and formed a line with their arms while reciting the Lord's Prayer. After Trudeau ordered police to confiscate gasoline and arrest anyone who tried to give gas to the truckers, thousands showed up with jerry cans of gasoline. 6. Canadian government attacks its people by James Bishop. The convoys have been nothing but legal and peaceful, albeit inconvenient and disruptive, which is the whole intent. Canadian governments have refused to meet with the convoy representatives, and the staff have used very questionable and some illegal methods, stealing fuel and firewood, to deter the protesters. It has been suggested that police will soon take action to forcibly evict the protesters, which include families with children and their trucks. 7th, Canada's Ontario to lift some restrictions. Alberta end masks in schools. The Canadian province of Ontario said it will accelerate its plan to eliminate certificate requirements and remove capacity limits for many businesses, while the western province of Alberta eliminated its mask requirements for school children. Europe. First, convoy for freedom in Brussels punctured. Anti-restriction demonstrations expected in Brussels on Monday were expected to bring the Belgian capital to a standstill, but the reality has left far fewer protesters than expected. Second, demands. The list of demands of the French convoy for freedom is very curious. They want to blockade the capital until the following points are agreed upon: the end of the health restrictions, the end of taxes on gasoline, the abolition of certain social taxes, the departure of the current government, the end of all European directives, the dissolution of the Parliament, the dissolution of the Senate, the dissolution of the Constitutional Court. Third, official declaration of the French convoy. In quotes, the citizens understand that they are demanding their freedom, their rights, and conditional access to health, education, and culture, respect for the essential values of our Constitution. Let us stop the sacrifice of children and young people. Let us stop the mistreatment that is suffered on a daily basis. Canada has led the way. European convergence for our children and all citizens is now. Fourth, official response from the French government. In quotes, we will put in place the means of intelligence and action if ever people would like to block the freedom of others, and especially access to the capital. The gendarmes are highly mobilized. We will assume our responsibility so that freedom of movement is never hindered. The state's response will be extremely harsh. 5. Similar convoys are being planned in Austria, Finland, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Germany, and other European countries, where truckers and others will enter their countries' capitals on Saturday. 6. Gasoline prices soar in the UK. The price of fuel surpassed £1.77 euros, equivalent to euros, 1.77 euros in the UK, surpassing the previous high recorded last November. The cost of filling up a car is the highest in 5 years. 7. Thousands of homes in North London and Hertfordshire have been plunged into darkness after a major power cut. Protests. First, Senator Rand Paul calls on truckers to blockade Super Bowl. In quotes, I am all for it. Civil disobedience is a time-honored tradition in our country, from slavery to civil rights. You name it. Peaceful protest, get people thinking about mandates. Second, Israel's own freedom convoy arrives in Jerusalem. Thousands of protesters descend on Jerusalem to denounce Israel's mandates in force. Israeli vehicles take part in a Canada-style protest convoy against the regulations in Jerusalem on February 14, 2022. A massive chain of vehicles has jammed traffic in Jerusalem as thousands of Israelis took to the streets to protest the restrictions. Third, protesters resist Macarena in New Zealand. Neither Cyclone Dobby nor the Macarena are able to drive out protesters camped outside New Zealand's parliament. As a measure against the week of protests, Wellington's Speaker of Parliament, Trevor Mallard, played the song on loop along with Barry Manilow's hits. Protesters responded by dancing to the music. South America. Chilean truckers lift blockade in the north of the country after an agreement with the government. The access routes in the north of Chile will be freed as of Monday after the agreement signed between the government of Sebastián Piñera and the truckers who maintained the blockade in protest against the murder of a driver in Antofagasta. Second, leaked documents reveal military exercises carried out in Argentina during Macri's government for a possible invasion of Venezuela. The maneuvers, called Puma, were carried out between April and July 2019, precisely the year of the greatest escalation against Caracas. A set of documents leaked in Argentina revealed the commitment of the government of Mauricio Macri to participate in a possible invasion of Venezuela, sponsored by the US, which would seek the overthrow of President Nicolás Maduro. The information about that possible attack was published on Sunday by the Argentine portal El Cohete a la Luna, the rocket to the moon, after receiving the documents from some military chiefs. Economic crisis. First, The Economist's February prediction. The global market crash of the Black Swan event is coming now. Get ready for the global reset, the activation of the central bank digital currency, and the transition to the new financial system. Second, tweet from Tamika Hamilton. Every time you hear people mention a cashless society, just remember how the Canadian government froze $9 million in digital payments to truckers. Third, corporate USA could implode this week, according to Benjamin Fulford. Corporate USA missed January 31st external payments deadline. They were given until this week to raise the money or not receive the borrowed money they need to stay in business. Of course, they are trying to avoid this by starting a conflict in Ukraine. It is like a schoolboy trying to blow up his school to avoid an exam he knows he's going to fail. The White Hats promised to step in after the implosion to restore democracy, freedom of the press, and competent economic, social, and environmental stewardship. Any long-time market watcher knows that usually when stocks rise, bonds fall, and vice versa. But when both collapse simultaneously, it would be a black swan event. It is not Trudeau's decision to resign or to try to stay. It's the decision of the World Economic Forum. This is a critical decision that would affect the entire world. This is not a battle just for Canada. It is a battle for the whole world. This would be the first domino of corruption, and if it fell, the whole plan would fail because all the dominoes would fall if they are forced out of power. The World Economic Forum cannot afford for Trudeau to resign. If he falls, Biden would fall, Australia would fall, New Zealand would fall, and all of Europe would fall. Then the rest of the world would join in. The same world is mad not to make Ottawa the hill they will die on and not give up. It is an unexpected opportunity, probably an opportunity that will not present itself again. Fourth, Elon Musk's claim that the true US national debt could be 3 times the size of its entire economy. Elon Musk has claimed that the debt is not sustainable and warned that it is actually about 3 times the size of the national economy. In quotes, the true national debt, including unfunded entitlements, is at least $60 trillion, roughly 3 times the size of the entire US economy. Something has to give, the SpaceX and Tesla CEO tweeted Thursday. 5. Scientists assure that the object on a collision course with the moon is not a SpaceX Falcon-9. A few weeks ago, Billy Gray, renowned astronomical software developer, assured that the remains of the upper stage of a SpaceX rocket could hit the hidden side of the moon next March 4. However, the expert acknowledged having made a mistake in identifying the object WE0913A with the remains of the Falcon-9 launched in 2015. Inflation. Inflation beats expectations, Fed warns. It may be too late and calls emergency meeting. Suddenly, the Fed convened an accelerated closed board meeting on Monday, February 14th. The purpose of the meeting was the review and determination by the Board of Governors of the advance and discount rates to be charged by the Federal Reserve banks. Second, decline of the dollar according to the Nomad Economist. It is well known to those who follow what is going on that the dollar is on its way out of global reserve status. In fact, several financial advisors are predicting the demise of the dollar as the world's basis for currency exchange. It seems that several people are aware that China, Japan, Russia, and France are taking definitive steps in that direction. Brazil and Argentina, as well as Cuba, are all in the same camp. Deteriorating consumer outlook. As concerns about inflation have increased, consumers' outlook on the trajectory of the economy has deteriorated, worrying some experts that negative attitudes could reduce spending and dent economic growth. Fourth, financial atrocities at the heart of all the world's problem by Rob Kirby. Macroeconomic analyst Rob Kirby says all the world's problems, whether it is the trackers in Canada or the problems in Ukraine, can be traced back to the creation of secret money and lies to cover it all up before it explodes. In quotes, all the geopolitical tension around the world can be traced back to money. The amount of money being created is staggeringly more than has been acknowledged and published for consumption. Politics. First, Obama holds secret meeting with Democrats in Congress. Last week, it was revealed that former President Barack Obama secretly met with Democrats in Congress while Joe Biden sat in the basement, providing more evidence of who is really in charge. Second, will Trump return to power? Here is his strategy for doing so. The first thing the former president has done is to control the Republican Party, something that has worked out very well for him. Once, after the assault on Congress, there is talk of the possibility of a split between Trumpists and anti-Trumpists. Third, hole in the narrative. A new video released recently on January 6th has opened a giant hole in the narrative. According to the released footage, someone working at the Capitol opened a pair of electrically controlled magnetic locking doors, which could only be controlled by Capitol security, allowing protesters to flood inside. The Capitol doors were purposely opened on the day of the protests, according to testimony from a Navy veteran. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.